Greetings, salutations, hello, fellow nations. My name is Phil, and that, of course, is Phil with one L. And today I am participating in Nando V Movies essay prompt for the one last scene. I've always wanted to do one of these. Last year I almost did the one musical scene, but I had some technical issues and I wasn't able to record at that time, and so it never really worked out. But I'm glad to be here this go round and throw my hat in the ring with my entry into one last scene that means a lot to me. I think I've said this before on the channel, but I am a huge fan of the Scream franchise. I grew up with a lot of Wes Craven's work, like the Scream movies, his entries in the Nightmare franchise before it kind of got away from him. The People Under the Stairs, like all classics. I grew up just adoring his work, and yeah, like the Scream franchise is just something that means a lot to me. I love those movies. And so it goes without saying that this video is gonna have spoilers for the Scream movies. So if you haven't seen them, go, like, please don't let me be the one to spoil these movies for you. They're a lot of fun to experience firsthand. So yeah, it's here where I'm gonna focus mainly on one of the central protagonists, if not the central protagonist, Sidney Prescott. Sidney is not only like the best final girl in like any horror movie franchise, but she is one of the like best like movie heroes, period. And I'm gonna explain why. To understand me, you have to know that I love tragedy, and that's part of the reason I'm so endeared to this character. She's not like many horror protagonists who willingly put themselves in dumb situations and continue to make the worst decisions possible. She's not wandering into haunted houses or ghost towns or touching things that obviously shouldn't be touched. In the case of Sydney, like all of the stuff that happens to her, like none of it is her fault. It's not her fault that her mother would have an affair with her boyfriend's father, leading to him snapping and going on a murder spree, forcing her to kill him in the end. It's not her fault that her dead boyfriend's mother would then start another murder spree as a form of revenge for the murder of her son, and I guess kind of ruining her marriage too. Side note, one of the most messed up things that has happened to Sydney in any of well, everything that happens to her is messed up. But one thing that like really makes me sad every time I think about it is in Scream 2, when Sydney had work to put behind everything that happened to her in that first film. She was going to college and exploring her interest in theater. She had a boyfriend who genuinely loved her, as proved by the very famous and beloved scene where he jumps on the cafeteria table and sings about how much he loves her. And in the end of that film, when one of the killers is revealed, he weaponizes Sydney's trust issues and makes her question whether or not this guy really loves her, or was it all just a play like in the last movie. And before she can figure out that answer for herself, that decision is like robbed from her before she can make that judgment, and he's killed right in front of her, and all she can do is apologize as she tries to close his wound, but there's really nothing she can do at that point. And I always think about that and get earnestly sad about just how twisted of a moment it is. I mean, she's literally gaslit into believing that her sense of security was falsely placed. And I mean like the literal definition of gaslighting, not the like watered down internet overusage of that term. And gaslighting is a commonly used abuse tactic. It's also not her fault that her mother was forced to give birth as a victim of SA, and that baby would grow up and be the cause of all this starting in the first place. These movies are stories about betrayal and the trauma, the very real trauma that comes from that. I mean, there's a reason that Sydney resonates so much with abuse victims and survivors. All of these things keep happening to her, and yet every time she pushes through and she rises to the occasion and fights back. And she overcomes, in this case, like more literal demons. And one of my favorite things about Sydney is that even after all of this, she refuses to let herself be painted as a victim. Now, I know that Scream 3 is like the black sheep of this series and regarded by most as the worst entry in the franchise. And I'm here to say, nuh-uh, not while Scream Resurrections exists. If Scream Resurrection has 0 haters, then I am dead. Okay, Rocket, What? What is the matter? Oh, do you want to leave? Hold on. Okay, well, I opened the door, so I don't know what else you want from me. Where was I? Yeah. Does Scream 3 fall to the bottom of the franchise? Like, sure, of like my ranking, sure. Um, like there are things I like and things I don't. Like it falls to the bottom not because I hate it. I don't think it deserves the vitriol it's been receiving for the last 23 years. But if there is one thing or anything that Scream 3 gets right, it's the ending. You see, after the events of the first two films, Sydney decides to go off the grid, living in solitude in a cabin home in the mountains of California. While in hiding, she works for a crisis hotline under the name Laura as she comforts victims of abuse, something she's unfortunately forced to become very knowledgeable of. And then she's forced once again to return to investigate when both she and her friends are once again threatened by a masked killer. In a very controversial twist, the killer is revealed to be Sydney's half brother, who was conceived from SA and given up for adoption shortly after birth. A typical Scream third act ensues, and Roman loses, and as he lays dying, he and Sydney hold hands. Roman seeking comfort from the only family he's ever known, and Sydney returning this in a moment of compassion so he's not alone as he passes on. It's small details like this that make me love Sydney as a character even more. Like, we really get the sense that in another world, maybe things could have been different for this brother and sister duo. In the final moments of this film, Sydney ushers her dog into the house and goes to turn on the security system, but hesitates. Her friends, including a freshly engaged Dewey and Gail, tell her to come join them and watch a movie. She asks what kind of movie it'll be, to which her future husband Mark tells her to come and see. She makes her way to the living room, but stops as the door she just shut creaks back open. She stands and watches for a moment before smiling to herself and making her way to the living room to watch a movie. She says to herself, "I'ma leave the door open." Okay, I'm kidding. No words are said. There's just so much you can interpret from this look alone. Maybe she doesn't care if there's anyone on the other side of that door, and she doesn't go look. Maybe she's deciding that it doesn't matter if there's anyone on the other side. She's no longer going to live her life in fear. She's gonna go watch a movie with her friends. A simple metaphor for choosing to live her life. I also love the detail of her asking what kind of movie it'll be and Mark telling her to come find out. It would have been so on the nose for them to just make it come full circle and say a scary movie, just like how the series began. What kind of movie will her future be like? That's ultimately up for her to decide. I've used this shot as a meme a lot, but it is one of my favorite frames in a movie. With a simple smirk, Nev Campbell is able to evoke the entire emotional journey that this character has been on for 3 films. It's an ending that I think is earned when you think about everything that Sydney has been through in the trilogy. And I do intentionally say trilogy because at the time, this was the ending for one of the biggest horror franchises of the 90s. It was a huge moment in pop culture as many thought that they'd never see these characters again. And regardless of how you feel about this film in particular, it's one of the most subtle and powerful endings in any trilogy. And I wouldn't even say that Scream 4 comes along 11 years later and undoes this, because that movie is essentially a clever commentary on the remake trend that had become very popular at that time. Scream 4 is a really well done epilogue for the Scream trilogy. Wes Craven and screenwriter Kevin Williamson waited 11 years before returning to this world. They let the idea come to them and the commentary write itself, so it didn't really feel forced. And Sydney's arc follows through into that 4th movie. She's an author gaining success from writing about her experiences, and when Ghostface reemerges, she takes on a mentorship role and helps her cousin survive something that she herself has been through. Scream 4 doesn't shy away from criticizing remakes and their incessant need to rehash and redo things from the past.
You forgot the first rule of remakes, Jill. Don't fuck with the original.
I think the point where this ending in Scream 3 gets a little messy and undone would probably be Scream 5, otherwise known as Five Cream, which is a film I'm still mixed on to this day. It's the first film in this franchise where Sydney's presence feels completely unnecessary and redundant. She's just kind of there. And so I was really glad that they decided, well, they didn't decide. They didn't pay her what she deserved. But nonetheless, I'm glad that Sydney wasn't in Scream 6, otherwise known as Scrisixum, and that they just write her off with like it's a simple but actually pretty meaningful line. So I'll give that movie credit.
She sends her love, but she's taking Mark and the kids someplace safe. She deserves to have her happy ending.
Because she does. She does. She deserves her happy ending. It absolutely makes no sense whatsoever for her to be here at this point without teasing her death even more than usual or just flat out killing her off. And I'm so tired of legacy characters, of the whole like legacy characters needing to die in order to invoke some meaning or importance. I'm so sick of that trope. It happens all the time in requels, and especially in a lot of recent horror requels that have treated their leading ladies as disposable. And so I just feel like using Sydney any further than this is just interfering with where Wes left the character. I hope, and I say this as a fan of the series and the character, I hope we never see Neve Campbell's face in this franchise ever again. You know, I'm kind of okay if we never get another Scream film. Scream 6 also delivers a satisfactory ending for the characters introduced in 5, and so I feel like a 7th film would almost undo this, especially with a new filmmaker at the helm. You almost need the uniformity of a director's vision behind this if you're going to do a series with a through line. That's why Scream 1 through 4 works as Wes Craven's vision, and Scream 5 and 6 work as their own chapter from the mind of radio silence. If you've been following my work for the last almost 2 years I've had this channel now, you know that I like to end a lot of my videos by saying, please remember at the end of the day, it's all good. And if it's not right now, I promise it's gonna be. I say that as someone who has been through a lot in life, and I am saying that to people who have been through a lot. Because I know firsthand that it feels like it's gonna be that way forever. And you know, you're always gonna feel that way. So I like to end all of my videos, well, most of my videos, with an assurance that it is only a feeling and that it is only temporary. And I'm glad we have a character like Sydney Prescott in the Scream franchise of all things, who can illustrate that your past is not who you are. It doesn't define you, nor does it define your future. It says that you are more than the things that have happened to you, and that you can overcome anything, whether that be several murder sprees or something a bit less dire. And most importantly, it illustrates that one day, whether that be in the near future or far, far from now, one day you will be able to smile while knowing that you can leave your door open. Recently, without spoiling anything about the 60th anniversary specials, Doctor Who kind of applies this theme for its central character as well. The idea that you can put your pain behind you and find happiness while doing so. And any tragedy you faced doesn't have to define your story. Across the Spider-Verse has this theme as well. I just love that trauma is something that is being tackled in like every medium now. It just feels good, no matter how cheesy, to see characters that you love or characters that you really care about get a happy ending. And that's why I love the Scream 3, like, you know, despite the other pitfalls of that movie, that's why I love the Scream 3 ending so much. So yeah, that's my one last scene. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to stick around. And is there anything else? Oh yeah. Please remember, at the end of the day, every day, it's all good. And if it's not right now, I promise it's gonna be. Take care, Nomies. I will see you in the next one.
Well, I read somewhere once, just when you think things can't get any worse, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they get better. Out of Darkness by Sidney Prescott, page 220.